Well, welcome back to another episode of From Tailors with Love. I am joined by returning guest Nick Guzan from Bamf. How are we doing today, Nick?
Doing well, thanks for checking.
Okay, always good to see you, pal. And Scott Fraser from the Scott Fraser Collection. How are we doing today, Scott?
Very well, very well. Thank you very much. It's this lovely sunny day, so you can't have a bad day, to be honest.
It's it's freezing here in London right now. You're in London, Scott.
Were you in the same London? It was boiling today.
Oh no! It's a ruse, that sun. It doesn't offer any heat.
I was in my t-shirt.
Well, I feel the cold. That's what I say.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But fair enough. Scott, please, for the uninitiated, introduce yourself and tell us about the brand, please.
So I'm Scott. I'm Scott. I started Scott Fraser Collection. I'm the founder. I wear all the hats, as I was just saying earlier. I started it back in 2013. It was a sort of very much like a sort of side project for me. I was working sort of several other jobs at the time, mostly sort of in menswear, and I just was looking for things that weren't out there. And it's such a long story to kind of go back, but basically I come from a kind of, my dad is a real sort of do-it-yourself kind of guy, and he taught a lot of that to me as I was growing up. And in that kind of like setup, I kind of started the brand in that way. You know, I was looking for a bag, and I decided, well, I'm just going to make one. And I went out of my way looking to try to find the right makers or the right people to speak to about how you go about doing this. And from there, it's gone from that to the next project, to the next project, to there's a cat.
Yeah, sorry.
Flying across the screen.
You can't see this, but he's underneath where all the wires are, just looking to pull something out and sever it. So I just have to keep launching him behind me.
But yeah, I mean, I've been doing it since 2013, and it's kind of a passion project that has then grown and grown and grown very organically into how I spend my time every single day, and every waking moment that I think I am thinking about generally clothes, obsessing about clothes, and going down endless wormholes that keep on giving. Undulating. So nice. Really that's what the collection is about. It's about, we call it Culture Vita. It's about kind of just deep dives into culture, be it from sort of all eras really. You know, we were very fixated on, or I was very fixated on sort of mid-century design and culture when I first started, but as the brand grew and developed, my influences changed, and I think that's where I sort of opened it up much wider, and the net was sort of cast wider, and with that kind of came much more of an influence and much richer kind of content and things to look into, and you know, that could be then referenced. You know, we're in today, so in a way I kind of wanted it to kind of encompass a multitude of things. So
right, really cool. I stumbled across you about a year ago, I think, when we were doing an episode on the Talented Mr Ripley. And then just recently, Nick posted some stuff on the Instagram about your new Goodfellas collection. So Nick, when did you first come across Scott?
Well, I think it was probably about 5 years ago, maybe. And even to take my story back further, I first saw Goodfellas about 20 years ago, and loved the shirts, and couldn't really find anything like them anywhere. You know, I think there was it was tough. You know, suburban Pittsburgh is not really a fashion mecca anyway, but I think a lot of those knits, people just weren't making those, and so I'd always kind of had, you know, in the back of my mind, I especially loved, which I know is part of the Icon series, the black striped knit that Henry Hill wears in Goodfellas. Yeah. And so I'm always looking for alternatives like that, and just people that are making shirts like that. And I saw that there were a couple that you had offered that were just of that style, you know, before the Icon series, anything like that. And I was looking around, and just everything in your lineup, just, you know, you said you were inspired by mid-century, and it really was of that. You know, you could see that design, you could see that quality there, you could see the features, It wasn't like whenever some brands are starting to, you know, venture into knits and you could tell the quality's not there, or it's, you know, a modern take on it. Like these look classic. They look like they could have, you know, been, you know, in a shop in, you know, 1960, something like that. So I was really impressed with it. It was always just in my mind, and I always loved following the collection. Loved the, you know, the trousers with the high waist, the elegant pleats, you know, again, things that I hadn't been seeing anywhere. It was just so refreshing to see that, you know, your shop was just full of these. Yeah.
Very kind of you, man.
I perhaps should mention for the people that haven't been following your brand that you did the Icon series with the Talented Mr. Ripley, and now the second series with the Goodfellas. Could you touch upon the like the process, like how you go about making this knitwear?
I mean, starting from the Ripley, that was one that was kind of like, that's the dawn, really. I mean, at the beginning, that was kind of like where I thought, okay, this is what I need to create. You know, to give a bit of context, I've been collecting these knit shirts, you know, these kind of tops that have been coming from around sort of the mid 50s through to kind of the mid 70s and early 80s, you could probably say, but let's say like the glory golden era is that mid 50s to mid 70s. And I've been collecting those since I started working in London, actually, when I started the brand. But just before that, I started with this brand who would pay me in vintage knitwear, or at least I would like offer up like, oh, okay, just pay me that, and I don't mind, like, just I'll survive for a couple of days without, you know, too much money. I just love that top. I'll buy it anyway. But the backstory really, I just yanked my thing out with enthusiasm.
But headphones, really, by the way, for people.
Yes. Oh yeah, sorry. I've been collecting these sort of knits for a long time, and actually I've amassed like a collection of about 200 to 300 pieces. And with that, a lot of what goes into my knitwear is so much a distillation of all of those pieces that I've come across, be it a pocket or a color or a, you know, like a real technical kind of ripple stitch, or all of these things. So for me, I've been building this archive and shooting every single piece, color profiling everything, kind of like taking all the details and just sort of documenting them as a kind of like a mark of respect, which is a lot about what the brand is about. It's about kind of seeing those things that were there for a reason and should be brought through. And in mass kind of clothing, a lot of these small, minute details that are there for a reason or are there as, you know, part of functionality just get eradicated because it's just superfluous in their mind. And a lot of the time, I want to make sure that you keep those things because they are kind of the history, they're the heritage of those clothes. So the long and short is that I've been collecting for so long that it was inevitable that I would eventually recreate some of these pieces that I have never been able to get into my own collection. And the Ripley was the first one. It was one that I'd never seen and never really understood, you know, where it had come from. I'm pretty nerdy when it comes down to like labels and who did what, and so I'd never seen that top, and I still have never seen it, and I'm still yet to hopefully one day find it along my travels. But it was a process. Basically, I was already making knitwear, as Nick was saying, and I went to the factory that I was working with, and I said, right, this is what I want to create. Here's a picture, here's a sketch, this is what I'm looking to do. And then they said, yeah, that sounds great. I started basically picking out color profiles, you know, looking at different yarns, talking to them about, like, you know, the textures on the front panels, and watching the film thousands and thousands and thousands of times about where it sits on the waist, how many buttons, like the button positioning. I mean, I thought, you know, if I'm going to do this, and the thing about it is that, you know, you can do, and there's these replica clothing things and reenactment this and whatever. And I just thought if I was going to do this, I wanted to do it correctly and do it and give it the sort of justice and the respect that it kind of deserves. And all the people who are interested in it also deserved if they were going to go in. So
interesting. So you had the costume designers.
So that's sort of
yes, and Gary Jones, I think. Did you manage? I don't know if Anne Roth is still around, is she? But I think Gary
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I got. I think Gary through the sort of ether had got to them, and I got a comment back. I can't remember exactly who it was off the top of my head right now, but I know that it had somehow infiltrated, to them, and they kind of went, oh yeah, cool.
Cool.
Someone, yeah, like, oh cool,
nice
shit,
work.
yeah. But another friend of mine has like a friend of a friend, and there's a connection with Jude Law, and basically there was a word that had got back to him, and he was like, oh snap, I'm yet to have an order. But
did he also go cool?
Yeah, cool, yeah, good. Yeah, but he, I think that he sort of found it quite interesting. But,
well, I'm going to sound like a bit of a narcissist, but I've just gone through my own blog, right, and just going through some of the show notes that I made, and there is a label that you can see, and I'll have to send this to you. You've probably already seen it as you've
on the
Talented, on the. So Matt Damon's character is sitting smoking. I think he's forging the letters at the time, and there's a letter that pops out of one of his shirts, and I've only got like a couple of letters, and I'll throw this up on the show notes for this, and people can see it on the YouTube. Yeah. It's like, it reads ply, pimple or something. I'll WhatsApp it to you guys. I'll send it.
Please do.
I'm always, Nick, I know you're this way. Whenever you see a label in a movie, even if it's someone just kind of flashing the inner lining of a jacket, it's like gold dust for us, isn't it? We just go, whoa, and then you zoom in, and then you open up more wormholes, right?
Yes, but that life is but a wormhole,
right?
And you need to just go deeper in them. I love them.
And so I was going to ask about the intellectual property with films and clothes. I know, there's lots of red tape around these sort of things. Having written a book on James Bond, I know people are quite precious when it comes to, their IPs. Are you kind of mindful with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you don't want to get a knock on the door, and especially as this has a it's far-reaching. A lot of what this Icon series has done is actually, I didn't quite think about it at the time, but it's really kind of opened out what I do and what we do at SFC to people who would potentially not always be into like the other parts of the brand. So, I think it's important to be mindful that, if that's the case, and it's not just, your crew and that circle, that if it's going much further and potentially the press and that kind of thing goes further, that you want to keep abreast of what could happen or what might happen. And it was all good. I mean, I've got a couple of friends who are lawyers, and they kind of went through it, and the amount of time that's passed plus X, Y, and Z, they'll probably hate me for not like quoting what they'd said, but it was all good. Cool. Thankfully.
I mean, I think it's a case of because they look so good and authentic, that I mean, it might even pose a different kind of problem if they looked a little bit knockoff and cheap and it goes under the radar. Then I don't think anyone's going to be looking, but maybe it's maybe it's a good thing that they go, oh, look, this guy's doing it right. If they are.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time that obviously these pieces those pieces that they were using were all vintage anyway, so they would have been probably from the 50s or 60s. And a lot of like IP and intellectual property has expired in those times. And I'd sort of sealed it all up before I invested, because there's a lot of time that goes into developing these pieces. It's a lot of back and forth, and to simply just sort of close my eyes and go into it. I wanted to just be sure that I was going to be putting all my effort into it, and I wasn't going to be struck down per se.
In your prime. Nick, 200 vintage pieces that Scott's got in his collection. It sounds like a bit of a dream for us, right?
It does. Yeah, I know. I'm picturing that closet. Yeah.
And
it's not a closet even now. God, it's like a storage unit. But
nice.
I imagine
Yeah,
you
God.
have something like 200 odd Hawaiian shirts from Magnum PI.
Yeah, you know what? It's about 60 or so. So I've got a ways to go.
Respect, man. You're in the double digits. That's a big milestone.
I mean,
yeah.
Nick, if you had to have a film, I mean, Talented Mr. Ripley, Goodfellas, I mean, great iconic movies, great dress in there as well. What film would you perhaps go, right, Scott, can you please do this one next? Personal request.
Well, I mean, I think about it, and one time I did kind of put my 5 like formative movie, that was one of my posts one time. Goodfellas was one of them, specifically the outfit that, with the Idlewild shirt that I know Scott has addressed. Thinking beyond those, I'm trying to think. I loved the style in Evil Under the Sun, which was, again, thinking ahead to the summer, the old Agatha Christie adaptation. I really like the way that the clothes are there, and I feel like I haven't really seen those represented anywhere else. But yeah, that, and gosh, I'd have to keep thinking about that.
Yeah. What requests do you get normally, Scott?
What, for the Icon series? Or
Yeah, for the third one.
I mean, a mixture of things, and I think a lot of the time, actually, it's been hugely beneficial having people who are like very much in in a community. They want to share and their enthusiasm. So, as I was developing the Ripley, there was emails coming through. Hey, please, can you do this? And then same with the Goodfellas. Actually, sometimes the Goodfellas ones almost came in first. So it always is a great way to go, hey, yeah, don't tell anyone, but we're doing it. And thank you for, reaching out and trusting us to kind of try and create that. But yeah, it's the third one. I mean, I'm still thinking about it, really. There's development with the Icon series is kind of far reaching, so it doesn't always have to be a film. It's those iconic things. So it's from street scenes to the silver screen. We kind of put that kind of so I mean, there's a few kind of iconic pictures that I've always had, on my mantle or my sort of mood boards that I'm obsessed with. And it's not particularly knit shirts. It could be just sort of pieces of knitwear. But there are a few I've got which are from those pictures or are the exact same, that I'm playing with the idea of it. It's finding the right places to make them as well, because sometimes there'll be various different kind of technical details and things like that. So
the knits are made in Milan. Is that right?
In merino, yeah.
Sorry, merino.
Merino wool. No, it's the same. But yeah, they're made in merino wool. The Ripleys are made in Italy or in Milan, it's to be particular. And then the Goodfellas are made in Portugal, which was sort of a new direction for me. I'd started working with this factory who was they had very intricate knitting machines, and I did a kind of a summer polo as a sort of test run, and I was really impressed by what they did, and with the kind of intricacy of especially the Idlewild one, which is this black with the stripes. I just felt like it was a perfect match, because I knew that they would take the time to be intricate, because this thing was months for a stripe, going back and forth, and making and wash testing, and there's so many different processes. I mean, I didn't probably touch on it, but normally there'll be, let's say, 2 prototypes or samples that will go back and forth from the factory, and you've pretty much got it down because you've got the fit of the shape of the knit. But these ones were taking sort of 6, 8, 9, 10, swatch tests or actual fit garments, because there was a few kind of alterations that were needed with them.
Interesting. And you managed to get hold of the originals, is that right?
Yes, they are. So they are the pieces that were worn in the film. There's one which is the Salerno, which is the blue one, the short sleeve, the kind of one where he wears it with a vest underneath. It's worn open. Now, I sourced it through a New York costume house that was kind of like an old New York costume house contact that I made, because obviously, collecting for years, you build up these frameworks of who's got what or who knows where things go. And a lot of costume houses obviously buy tons of period clothing. And as sort of productions go out, they will need to clear space, even though where they store them is just these vast sort of holes in the earth. They're just huge. I've seen some of these places and they're just unreal. Anyway, I came across this knit through them, and now it doesn't have like direct lineage, but based on where it was in New York. I'd be very, well, make of it what you will, but I feel like it had very good, strong kind of links to there. The Idlewild, on the other hand, I have the same one, but it's in a different color. So they're both vintage pieces. And I have the same one that is in like shades of green. But then me being me, I know the maker, even though the green one didn't have a label, I knew all the different marks that came from the specific brand that would have made it back in the day. And I knew then the gray profiles that they would have used, because it's got like 5-6 shades of gray. And I've sort of pieced together like 5 or 6 pieces that I had in my own collection to then bring that in and then get the right colorings. So it's like really deep shit, man.
Nick, I thought you and I were good, but Scott's another level.
I know. Yeah, I admire that eye for detail. I was curious too, as you were looking at these and making them. I know that you strove for screen accuracy, but were there any times where you thought, like, I'd love to have this shirt, but like with the sleeves a different length, or different pocket space? I was just curious, like if you had any personal preferences for where the details might have varied.
So yeah, I think that's a really key point. Like I want to be screen accurate, but I also know that I'm making clothes for people for today, and there will be the adjustments that I feel that would make a better shirt. Certain sizing, the cuff. I mean, to be honest, the vintage model of the Salerno, the blue one, the balance of the garment was extremely off. The front, it was hanging down really low, and the back is almost up like above your coccyx, like middle of your back, where it has kind of shrunk. And it was actually a really awkward piece to wear. So we used the body shape that we know works. We've kind of made sure that it kept that kind of like closeness to the arm, elements that kept that look of it. We didn't want to change it completely, but then also contemporize it to the point where we know that, okay, that's going to work. But obviously not getting rid of the collars. The collars are what probably makes that piece, like the stripe detailing, the color of those pieces, because we even dyed up the yarn for the blue mid base, because I was struggling to find a blue that would even have a comparison. So with that, we just said, right, let's dye this up. There's the swatch, there's the original, boom, and made that link. So there are always those tweaks, and I think it's important to, if you're bringing something into a new generation, or into the world again, let's say, or you just recontextualize. And I think that's the most important thing, is to make it relevant for people today, not by simply like lowering the waist and changing things that will change its kind of like genetic code, let's say, but just kind of like just allowing a little bit more finesse.
Nice.
I got an idea of how you can push this forward to another.
Tell me.
So you already have like how well it looks and kind of the identical stitching and the colors and everything and whatnot. We now need to make them smell like cigarettes, like they were literally worn by Henry Hill, you know, and maybe kind of a little bit of a sweat by the neckline or whatever it might be. But, to get, it's almost like what they'd say 4D in cinema, that sensory perception of the clothes.
I really, or maybe like on the label, you could have some sort of scratch and sniff.
Oh yeah,
thing. I think that could be kind of a nice takeaway. That's a really great idea. I love you for that. Thank you.
You're taking it to the bank, buddy.
Oh yeah,
Scott. I'm afraid we've run out of time on the Zoom, but it was a real pleasure speaking to you, Nick. Always really great to catch up with you. Bamfstyle.com. I know you're going to be putting some editorials up there, reviewing some of the products. We'll leave some links over in the show notes from talersoflove.co.uk. But scottfrasercollection.com is a place where you can go and check out these wonderful pieces. And you're doing the Lord's work, Scott. Thanks so much.
No, and thank you for the interest. It's very kind of you to both yeah, just be interested in what I'm doing. So
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Right. Until next time.